Welcome to a special recording of the Scaling Tech podcast. I'm your host, Arin, and this video is my full interview with Val Narodetsky of Odesa, where we'll talk about his business as well as his take on the broader context of contract software development in Europe. This is part of a special episode of the Scaling Tech podcast that I'll be releasing on nearshoring in Europe, in which I'll speak with several guests such as Val. And so if you want to learn more about that episode, visit us at scalingtechpod.com or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Welcome to the Scaling Tech podcast, Val. It's a pleasure to have you here to speak with me today. Thank you for the time.
No, thank you, Arin. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's start with a little background. Tell us about what Odesa does.
Right. So Odesa is a remote tech team concierge agency. So we primarily work with US-based businesses, helping them hire top-tier talent from Ukraine, including developers, engineers, analysts, IT specialists, and so on. This allows them to save significant amounts of money on the hiring costs, and while also without sacrificing on the quality output of that talent.
And tell me a little bit about the origin story of the company, when and why it was founded.
Yeah, so Odesa is my fifth venture. Prior to starting this company, I had four other companies that I was able to scale in the past 12 years with two successful exits. Most of the background experience has been primarily focused mainly in e-commerce as well as consumer goods space. However, during the past decade or so, we were primarily focused on hiring Ukrainian talent just because I'm originally from Ukraine. I immigrated to United States in 1998. So having the ability of speaking the language, knowing the culture and understanding how things operate over there gives me a bit of a leg up in terms of managing and hiring the right talent. So after selling my most previous venture about a year and a half ago, I found myself a bit bored and looking for something else to do, just because I firmly believe that I still have juice in the tank, so to say. One of my very good friends, they have a substantial pet company doing about 30 million top line revenue. And when we were having dinner, he mentioned to me that they're really struggling with hiring their tech department for the expansion of the business. And that they had a very significant pain point of working with another recruitment agency for the past 2.5 months and not being able to really find anybody worthwhile of their consideration, because they were ultimately looking to hire a senior tech as well as two junior leads. So I decided to just, take a look under the hood and see what was the issues. So we did an assessment for them, and long story short, within I believe it was about 3 weeks time, we were able to find a highly qualified team lead for them and two junior leads out of Ukraine. Essentially just, staffing the entire department in less than a month, whereas they were struggling with that same process for 2.5 months via another agency. So at that point, it was a combination of kind of like an aha moment. Then I might be onto something here, just because I've done this sort of process for my previous companies. But at the same time, just because of the positive experience, one introduction led to another client, another introduction led to another client. So it really was a very organic path to growth. It wasn't really something that I even envisioned starting, but it landed in my lap. And after doing some soul searching as well as some market research, I figured, why not? I'm originally from Ukraine. I consider myself to be a serial entrepreneur. For the past 12 years, I've been hiring out of Ukraine for all sorts of tech roles, so the knowledge is certainly there. And why not productize it and offer it to the market here in US? And so far, it's been an amazing ride. We started about 2.5 months ago, and each month have been just doubling in business. So the response has been tremendous. So it certainly is on a good trajectory, and I really do believe that. As this company grows, as we start offering new ways of hiring overseas talent, this could be a big business.
That's fantastic, and congratulations on that success so far. It's always great to hear, and how it builds on, I think you said 12 years of experience of hiring in Ukraine, and obviously your local and personal knowledge. I can see where all of that is a huge benefit in it for sure. Um, Tell me a little bit more about the types of customers that you work with primarily.
Right. So the primary category of customers are SMBs, agencies, e-commerce brands, and tech startups. Right now, we're also just given the initial success with, like I mentioned, a company that was doing about 30 million top line. We're trying to use that as an anchor to get into a bit more mid-market size businesses. However, just given my background in e-commerce space, my network is pretty robust in terms of other brand owners and so on. So if I had to put I guess like a range to the type of customer that we're working with, it would be a company that's doing at least 2 million in top line, going as far as, like I've mentioned before, 30 million, just because the type of client that we're looking for is somebody that has a little bit of infrastructure already built out, but needs that additional remote tech team access, right? So I probably wouldn't consider this to be a good fit for like a solopreneur where they're kind of wearing multiple hats. They're the janitor and the CEO, right? This is probably meant for a little bit more businesses that are already a little bit established. But primarily, primary category of our customers are based in US as of today. However, that's just because the company itself is very young, and primarily we have done very little advertising. Most of our clients as of today came from word of mouth, and just because of the good experiences they've had with the kind of like the beta stage of our company. But there's certainly plans to expand not only on the client side but also on the talent side, and going beyond the borders of Ukraine and actually looking into EU as well as neighboring countries like Poland, Latvia, Serbia, things like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd like to come back to that more and talk about that. Yeah, it's fantastic that most of your growth now is organic and referrals and your network. It's certainly the best way to grow a business. Rings very true for me and my own experience as well. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of tech stacks that you work with. I know you mentioned e-commerce, and your website talks about Shopify. Tell me a little bit more about sort of the types of skills that you recruit for.
Yeah, so we have, as of right now, in our immediate database, we have approximately 80 engineers of all different sizes, right? So the tech stacks really vary depending on the needs of the client. However, some of the primary ones that we've seen, it's Python, JavaScript, PHP, Ruby on Rails. We're also expanding into more platform-related talents such as Salesforce, Snowflake, AWS, things like that. One of our most recent clients, actually, we just onboarded them yesterday. They're looking to staff a department that's primarily focused on Laravel and MySQL, where their application is very jobs heavy. They're doing about a million jobs a day or so, and they're experiencing a lot of failures. So they're bringing us in as a la carte recruitment agency to help them staff to essentially close the gaps on the issues that they're having. And they're very interested in bringing somebody from overseas. It's a US based company, but they're primarily interested in bringing talent from Ukraine just because of the quality output and the reputation.
So let's talk a bit about the situation in Ukraine, and first, I don't even know how to express it properly, unfortunately, but just to say that my heart goes out to everyone in the Ukraine and the horrible invasion by Russia there. Ukraine has always been, for a long time, been known as a real center of tech talent in Europe, and a wonderful place to work with software developers. A lot of talent and experience there. How has the invasion of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, affected your business?
It's tough, right? We shouldn't beat around the bush. This is a very difficult situation. The problem is that prior to the war, Ukraine's engineering output in terms of people graduating with some kind of computer science degree was approximately 250,000 people per year. For the country of Ukraine size, that's pretty substantial, which puts them really up there in terms of providing that sort of specialized talent on a global scale. After the war, right now, because of the issues with infrastructure and everything that's been going on around there and all the atrocities, that number has reduced down to almost by half, about 130,000. With that said, though, Sequoia Capital actually just published a white paper not too long ago related to a study of, how has the tech sector in Ukraine has been affected by the war. What's surprising to me was that, according to them, over 80, I believe 84%, Ukraine's tech talent is still employed in some kind of capacity, whether it's through leaving the country and just working out of, let's say, neighboring country like Poland or Moldova, for example, or just really just staying within the borders of Ukraine and actually maintaining contracts. One thing I can tell you is that it's really, on the personal level, it's really hard to see what these people are going through, especially on trying to work with them, despite their desire to to contribute to really make a mark on a global scale from the tech development perspective. One of because we're always interviewing, we're always onboarding new talent that's within Ukrainian borders. And we had a potential client who was looking for an engineer. We found one, a highly qualified guy. And the day of the interview, when we were supposed to meet, he sends me on Slack a message: "Hey, we are under drone attacks right now. I am unable to come to the meeting to have an interview with this potential employer because there's drones literally above our heads and there's air raid sirens." And it's like, how heartbreaking is it? So it certainly had an effect. However, what I can tell you on a more positive note is that, given that the current situation is a little bit more isolated towards the kind of the eastern side of Ukraine for the majority of part, and I think that's kind of like in correlation to the Sequoia Capital's white paper, about 80% of interviews that we're having, our first question is, are you in a safe zone? Are you located anywhere where your life or your family's life might be in jeopardy, just not for the client's sake, but just for my personal sake? I'm from Ukraine, so I feel for these people. So the situation has certainly affected the way that we are onboarding talent. We've certainly had clients that are showing a bit of reservations in terms of moving forward, but for the most part, like I said, about 80% of the time, it is a positive experience. And some majority of the potential clients that we're having these discussions with, because we're very transparent, they show complete support. So my bet is that what I'm placing in terms of starting Odesa, my bet is that this will be over soon, and when it is over, there's going to be a huge initiative to rebuild the infrastructure, rebuild the country. My deepest personal desire is to have Odesa be located on the forefront of that rebuilding process when the time comes.
I certainly hope that there is an end to the war soon, and to the benefit of Ukraine. So I wish you total success in that vision for being part of that recovery. I think that's really inspiring. And I've had the opportunity through our work, although in my company we don't have anyone in Ukraine now. Directly, we've certainly seen people moving around as a result of that. And I've spoken with other entrepreneurs from Ukraine who have people both inside and out of Ukraine, based on kind of their situation even prior to the beginning of the war. And it's been inspiring to me in speaking to people like that, of, how, resolute they are, but also in how much they're just trying to move on. It's not quite the right word to use. It again, it's a difficult thing to express, especially as an outside observer. But their ability to say, we have to still continue with our lives and continue with our work, and so that in itself is inspiring. And I think, I certainly hope that the tech sector and your work does play a big role in the ultimate recovery of Ukraine.
For sure. For sure, there, the resilience that these people have shown is just truly remarkable. So I'm honestly very excited in terms of the long term when all of this is over, in terms of what kind of results we're going to be able to achieve post war conditions, for sure.
Now, you mentioned a possibility of expanding into, I believe you mentioned Poland and Moldova, elsewhere in Europe. Tell me a little bit more about that. And is that partly because of the war, or kind of something you would be looking at regardless?
No, not because of the war necessarily. Is just in terms of having a long term outlook on the scale of the company, right? Most of my prior ventures were primarily focused on maximizing profit as quickly as possible, right? So at the height of COVID in 2020, I sold a company that I started with $7,000, and we scaled it to high seven figures within, I think, like 30 months, right? So it was just like hockey stick growth right away. And that's kind of what has been trajectory for me, is like focusing on ventures that are more profit driven. Odesa is a platform that, for the first time in my career, is purpose driven, with profit being secondary. Knowing the caliber of talent that exists in the Ukrainian borders makes me very optimistic on the caliber of talent that exists nearby, right? Like I said, Latvia or Lithuania, Poland, Serbia, all of these countries I've had the pleasure of working with before in some kind of capacity. My primary objective was always to kind of look in my homeland, Ukraine. However, that's notwithstanding, we hired many times from the countries that I've mentioned. So I thoroughly realized the opportunity that lies there, in terms of kind of like the expansion initiative. Because my goal for Odesa in the long term is to, like I said, it's a purpose driven initiative to ultimately become one of the biggest remote tech team concierge agencies on the European side.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the business side of things. Tell me a little bit about like, what is the typical contract model that you're using with your clients? And I think you said earlier your clients primarily are in the US. Is that correct? Do you also work with clients in Europe?
We don't have any clients in Europe right now. All of our clients right now are based in US, right? And they kind of fall into that SMB e-commerce brand agency or a tech startup. Like that's kind of been our target profile as of right now, at least, with the primary kind of decision makers. As you can imagine, it's CTO, VP of engineering, chief of staff. So that these are the positions that we're having conversations with. In terms of the contract, so right now we're offering 3 different tiers, and we're looking into simplifying it, or just making it more mainstream. Because again, the company itself, even though I've been within the industry for the past 12 years, the company itself is relatively new. So these are our, I guess, testing grounds, if we can say them, right? So the primary and the most popular one that we've had is our a la carte recruitment. This is where we come in as your headhunter, where you give us your project scope, who you're looking to hire, how many people you're looking to hire, and the quality that you're looking for. And then we go to work, right? So we send you an engagement letter. Once everything is signed, my team basically reaches out to our proverbial boots on the ground, no pun intended, on the Ukrainian borders, and we start scouring and looking for that right talent. Our current timeline of between the engagement letter signed to actually presenting the target client with at least 2 potential candidates is around 14 days. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, just because of the complexities and client preferences, things like that. But from what we've seen right now, it's been about a 14-day period where within essentially 2 weeks, you're getting 2 to 3 candidates that are almost a perfect match for the project that you're looking at. So that's a la carte recruitment. This is kind of like a traditional recruiting model that we've been focused on. The second one, this is actually just came by demand of some of the clients that we're working with, is their need to always be hiring. So they came to us and they said, listen, Val, my company is growing incredibly aggressively, and I'm always looking to hire. I'm a big fan of remote tech teams. Instead of paying you a headhunter fee for every time I have to contact you, is there a possibility to have an ongoing relationship similar to a subscription business? So that kind of evolved into what we call remote teams unlimited, where for $999 per month, you get access to us 24/7. You have an account manager assigned to your account, and you are just you reach out to us anytime and you say, hey, I need a Python developer, or I need a Shopify developer, and we get that for you within, like I said, within 14-day period. The third model is our white label model. Just because of our unique positioning within the Ukrainian market and having access to, like I said, our immediate database is about 80 strong right now. We've been approached by a marketing agency, so agencies that are primarily focused on demand growth, marketing initiatives, Facebook ads, Google ads, things like that, who have never really had the infrastructure or desire to hire in-house engineering teams and Shopify developers and things like that, just because that's not their core business model. But they fully realize that this could be an excellent way to add to their top line revenue. So what we've devised is our white label reseller program, where we're essentially aligning ourselves with an agency who wants to introduce these complementary or secondary services to their clients, but we manage everything under the umbrella of the agency. So the prospective client never knows that Odesa is behind the scenes. We handle all of the work, and that's done mainly on hourly basis as of today, at least. So we have 3 different agencies right now. The way it works is they come to us and they say, hey, listen, I need let's say a Shopify developer. I have a project where, we're doing marketing for this client, but he needs to optimize his conversion rate because the website sucks. And obviously he's just kind of wasting ad spend, but I don't have that much of a consistent demand for these types of things. But can I resell your service, your access, your engineering access to him? And that's ultimately how the white label program works. They're just purchasing a package of hours from us. Typically, it's a package of 20 hours. Depending on the complexity of the project and the level of the talent that they're looking for, it starts at $45 per hour. And then we just build them on an hourly basis. So we're trying to figure out which of these 3 options will have the most effect. Right now, obviously, it's a la carte, just because that's what's been kind of recommended, and through all of our introductions and conversations that we've had, that seems to be the more popular one. But the remote teams unlimited is certainly taking shape, as well as the agencies are certainly noticing the opportunity in terms of being able to offer a whole separate service to their clients without the need of hiring in-house or training or managing really anything, just because we handle everything in-house on our end.
That's very interesting. The white label model is definitely interesting. I haven't personally encountered that one before, so I'll certainly be curious to see how that part grows for you as well. Now, the first 2 models were, as I understood it, both a recruiting model, just a difference in how you're paid, either a placement fee in the first one or kind of an ongoing subscription fee, as I understood it in the second one. So in both of those scenarios, you find the talent for them, and then after they interview and accept that talent, what is the contract model after that? Are your clients then like contracting directly with them as individuals? Are you involved in that at all ongoing as like an employer of record or anything along those lines?
Correct, right. So with the a la carte recruitment, we are finding the talent, and that talent gets transferred directly to the client's, let's say, ecosystem, right? So they're compensated by the client directly. They're signing contracts with the client directly. Our relationship essentially ends once the talent is located. So that's kind of like the standard recruitment agency type model. For the remote teams unlimited, it's more of a staff augmentation model where we're still involved in some kind of contractual obligations to the client, where because they're paying us monthly to have access to our database of engineers, we have an ongoing relationship with the client where we're billing the client on a monthly basis. Once the talent is found through the remote teams unlimited section, the engineer works still under our contract. However, after about a 2 to 3 month period, the target client can switch to a fulfillment to a la carte recruitment model, where they just basically absorb the talent into their ecosystem, basically going from staff augmentation to outstaffing. So that's kind of how it works, where, with a la carte, our relationship ends after the hire is finished. With Remote Teams Unlimited, we're still an ongoing relationship, and the talent that's working directly under us is still working directly under us, unless we get notified by the client that they're either wanting to move into a full-time employment or something like that.
And you mentioned a little bit about the potential cost savings compared to U.S. clients. Tell me a little bit more about those cost savings.
On average, we're seeing about 60 to 70% cost savings in terms of, apple to apple comparison. The requirements for a U.S. company to bring on a full-time, let's say, Python engineer, right? Their hourly rate requirements, as well as the payroll costs, the tax associated costs, and things like that, versus just bringing somebody from Ukraine and just contracting them out from overseas, is approximately about like 60 to 70% cheaper. That also translates into hourly pay, right? Because of a lot of talent that we're connecting with our clients is either on salary base levels or hourly base levels. So the hourly from our end, at most, depending on the complexity and the height of talent and so on, does not exceed $50 per hour or something similar to that. Whereas utilizing a US based equivalent, we're going way outside of that norm, sometimes reaching way beyond $100 an hour, if not more, as well as the salaries and everything that's associated with maintaining that. So the savings are tremendous, 100%. We have not had a single client that has been successfully onboarded where we found them the right talent, the quality talent they're looking for, tell us that, you guys didn't save me money. On that front, we have a 100% success rate.
Would you say in general, when you're speaking with clients, are they coming to you more for the cost savings or based on like talent acquisition, talent shortfall needs?
Yeah,
some combination.
It's honestly, they're coming to us for quality. They're more quality focused, and the cost savings acts as a cherry on top. It makes our process very easy to sell to a potential client, because given Ukraine's reputation as far as one of the primary drivers of tech talent on a global scale, at least prior to war, the clients that we've interacted with are fully aware of the quality output differences between Ukrainian tech talent, specifically engineers, and US based. So when we were having conversations, the conversation regarding, hey, how much money am I going to save, is actually secondary. The first one is, I'm looking for somebody who's really good, that knows what they're doing, somebody who can work directly with me or with my chief of staff. And then obviously that rolls into, I don't want to work with US based engineering talent for this particular project just because the quality has been poor. The expectations of, what would be the proper term, the expectations of raises and promotions are extremely high, and that just translates into an unpleasant experience overall. So that's why from our conversation so far, whether it's a CTO or VP of engineering, they are very focused on bringing somebody from outside who can turn out much better quality, and then the savings of also come with being part of that region of the world, I guess.
Oh, it's always best to have the conversations first around quality and then later on about cost, for sure. So that's excellent. So how do you differentiate talent in Ukraine from others in your region, in Europe, or on a global scale? How would you describe that?
Well, the primary differentiator for Odesa platform is our hyper focus on the tech sector. We're not looking to compete with VAs. We're not looking to compete with data entry or low level job scopes, just because I'm fully aware that there's a ton of similar agencies that will probably fulfill that role better than we could. Simply because that's not the talent that we're focused on is very specialized talent. And from my personal research and just my personal experience in terms of working with other companies or other recruitment agencies, having that kind of almost horse with a blinders on focus on supplying the top 1% tech talent to US based companies is what really makes us stand out. Plus, on top of that, we do offer 90 days a replacement guarantee. So whereas client comes to us and they say, listen, we hired this engineer. On paper he was amazing, but things didn't work out, or we had to part ways. If this happens within a 90-day period, we find you a replacement free of charge. There is absolutely no additional expense on the client's behalf if the relationship doesn't work out within the first 90 days. And just going back to the top 1% tech talent, the database of guys that's working with us right now that are based on within Ukrainian borders, you're not going to see them posting jobs on Upwork as a freelancer or freelance.com to do these one or two simple tasks. These are highly qualified, highly educated, top tier engineers that are primarily involved in high level projects for an extensive amount of time. So it's a unique approach in terms of who we hire and how we hire them. Just because our vetting process is very rigorous, and at the same time, we try to only focus on that very, very top level tech talent, right? So we're trying to completely avoid anybody that would not be considered within our guidelines as top level.
Are there any special concerns that U.S. companies should have when they're working with a contract firm in Europe? Is there anything, for instance, about in the way that they contract with you, or anything about like labor law in Europe or in Ukraine that affects that relationship?
I mean, yeah. So there's always considerations to be made, right? You're dealing with an entirely different region where the laws are different related to contract engagements, data protection, privacy. I think those probably would be the kind of the primary drivers in terms of making sure that the IP that's located within the company whenever you're hiring somebody from Europe or overseas or Ukraine for that matter, that you're properly utilizing all necessary tools to really protect the intellectual property. At the same time, you have to be mindful of cultural differences. On the contract side, a company that's based in US should really do their homework on educating themselves in terms of kind of like, I always look at things like kind of what's the worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario. The best case scenario is that I hire a rock star engineer and he doubles my outputs and the company grows profitably. The worst case scenario is engineer is hired, he turns out to be somebody shady, tries to steal company secrets, and then good luck enforcing the contract, right? So that kind of has to go into that realm. It doesn't often, but you have to be prepared as a business owner, right? So the complexities, I think I guess if I had to point a finger to it, there's four of them, right? So it's data privacy, data protection, IP protection, minding the cultural differences, the legal implications and jurisdictions and how those play into working with somebody on the European side, and also the tax implications, right? So depending on how the talent is hired, how the contracts are put together, those four areas should be looked at very carefully by the prospective companies that are specifically US based, and really just doing your homework and due diligence and being proactive when you're actually moving forward. From our side, at least, we're a US based company. We're based in South Florida, so going back to kind of having a contractual obligation on like a remote Teams Unlimited, for example, it's a very straightforward process because it's a US company doing business with US companies. We're all abiding by the same laws, the same contractual laws. There is no concern about the IP kind of being compromised or anything like that, just because this is our I'm personally involved in that element as well. But when you're engaging on other front in terms of hiring full time and things like that, you just have to do your homework. That would be my number one advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so as we wrap up here, What do you think is the current state of the tech industry in Europe in general?
Evolving. It's evolving quite rapidly. There is a very strong focus on innovation, given that today's boom surrounding the AI evolution over the past year and a half or so. It's evolving, right? There's going to be, from my understanding, entire sectors within the tech sector that are going to be overtaken by AI, but it's also going to be like a double-edged sword where the disappearance of those subsectors will introduce a new area of kind of AI assisted tech industry, right? Where because your job got replaced by AI, now you can actually go get educated, get certified how to manage the AI that overtook your job in the first place. So I think it's going to be a seesaw of emotions, expectations, and it's going to go through some serious changes over the next several years. But in general, it's booming. It's evolving into a positive trajectory. And like I said in the beginning, the primary focus on innovation is what really excites me.
Thank you, Val. Appreciate it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners about your work?
Nothing exactly in particular. I think you did an amazing job covering all of the elements. One thing I do want to offer to your listeners, if there is any listener out there who is kind of on the fence of exploring working with remote tech teams, I would urge you to reach out to me directly. Let's have a conversation. I'm more than happy to give $500 off to any of your listeners as a promotional thing for being part of this podcast, which was an amazing experience. But it's, from our side, from the conversations that we've had with clients thus far, it has been primarily positive with the primary focus on quality output and savings. So if any of your listeners are looking for the remote tech team services, if anybody's looking to scale their company using tech teams, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you one-on-one, see what your needs are, and go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, Val, on this special episode of the Scaling Tech Podcast. What's the website or anywhere else that our viewers can go to learn more about your work and to get in touch with you?
They can go to hireodesa.com.
All right. Excellent. hireodesa.com. Thanks to all of you for viewing this interview. To learn more about the Scaling Tech Podcast and to see our special episode on nearshoring in Europe, visit scalingtechpod.com. And you can follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and LinkedIn. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.